Hey there, it's Andrea. Welcome back to another amazing interview with a great school PR pro. This show is called Mastering Social Media for Schools, and it's meant for you, the school communicator who's trying to utilize social media to celebrate the great things happening. And guess what? Right now, today's April 21st. We're on school closure, and so that looks a little bit different. Today, my interview is with a dear friend of mine, Shane Haggerty. He's an APR, and he is out of Ohio. You are soon going to understand why I wanted to interview him. I have learned so much about school PR because of the people that I hang around with. Hang around with people smarter than you, and you're going to learn a thing or two. Well, today, Shane is going to put on a master class and inspire you with some of the things that he is seeing on social media and schools, the powerful way that they're connecting. Career tech schools, listen up. Shane has a lot of knowledge that he's going to share there. You know, career tech, it's really about hands-on learning. And there's some unique ways that they're highlighting some of those things. Also, recruitment, and then some of the connections once people have committed to coming to your school, they're having to use new tools. And so he's going to talk about some of those tools that they'll be using to keep up those connections, not only with students, but with parents and most specifically moms. And then finally, you know, Shane's really been a pioneer when it comes to social media. He did an amazing campaign 11 years ago. That's 2009. With student influencers. I know we didn't call them student influencers back then, but they were, and they did not have things like this. They had a flip cam and a little digital camera, and they captured what was going on with the school in their eyes, and it was super powerful. They actually had like celebrities. You're going to hear all about it. Now, before we get started, I wanted to share a simple K-12 PR tip. You are going to hear Shane talk about a lot of different social media platforms. Of course, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and then also YouTube and TikTok. And if you are like me, sometimes I listen to all those things and I start like, I want to throw up, right? It can be overwhelming. So my advice to you, if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you don't really understand all the channels, do one really well before you launch into other platforms. And because we work with hundreds of schools across the United States, the #1 platform for all of those schools is Facebook. Do Facebook well before you worry about those other channels. That's where you're going to drive the most engagement. You should be posting at least twice a day on Facebook before you think about posting on other channels. Now, where should you go after Facebook? Ask your audience, right? Where do your parents and your students in your community, where do they want to see you? Where do they want to hear from you? Go there next. Might be Twitter, might be Instagram, might be YouTube, who knows? But you need to ask the question. So I hope that tip helps. Very easy tip to take to heart. And now we're going to jump into our interview with Shane. Hey guys, just a heads up. The audio and the video are not exactly matching. I did something new today. I tried something new and I failed. But just listen. This is a great interview, but I'm going to say maybe you don't want to watch all of it because our lips and the sound are not exactly going to match up during this interview, but it is quality and I hope you do listen, and it will be coming to a podcast near you soon. So let's lean into this interview with Shane, and thank you in advance for being so gracious as I try something new, just like you guys are trying new things all the time. Shane Haggerty, how's it going?
Hey, I got my quarantine hair going on.
I love it.
It's a lot longer than I ever keep it. I'm going gray.
With the
But hey, yeah, everything's good. Lockdown here in Ohio.
yeah.
The governor just announced that schools were canceled for the year just an hour ago. So we're going to be dealing with that. And then, but all in all, I can't complain, right? I'm healthy.
Yeah.
my family's healthy.
Yes,
So
very, very good. Well, I'm really excited. You're kind of my official second guest on this is a new podcast now. We're going to turn this into Mastering Social Media for Schools because there's some great things going on and have been since the 6 years that I've been involved with kind of school PR and social media. But I really see you, Shane, as kind of a pioneer in regards to what's coming next. And we're going to get into that in today's interview. But first, if people don't know who you are, can you just kind of share who you are and a little bit of your background?
sure. So Shane Haggerty, I don't even know where to start, but I've been at this, I guess, in education since 1998 when I graduated college and got my first teaching job at my alma mater in Little Convoy, Ohio, Crestview High School. I taught middle school and high school English for 3 years, and I was also then, at a very young age, became an administrator. I became an assistant principal and athletic director and did that for 3 years, and thought that it got burnout from doing that and thought like, oh, I need to go do something else. So I went and got a master's degree in sports marketing and thinking I wanted to go that route, but somehow ended up back in schools doing school communications. So I was able to kind of blend my love for public relations and education and have worked as a school communicator, marketer since 2007 when I got my first full-time school communications job at Ohio High Point Career Center, which was located on the highest point in Ohio, Campbell Hill. You would not know it's the highest point in Ohio, but it actually is the highest point in Ohio. Yeah, and so after that, left and started my own company, which, basically I do consulting for schools and educational organizations, nonprofits. But then somehow got roped back into doing full-time school PR and did that for 4 years and then returned to my company, which is what I'm doing now. And so I work with not just schools. I have done some work for the National School Public Relations Association and working on a campaign up in Grand Rapids, Michigan that was actually supposed to launch last month. But like everything else, got put on hold. Have been working on this big campaign for Columbus City Schools, a documentary series. It's part of their Portrait of a Graduate thing. And again, on hold, right? Because the world just stopped. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. So I've been at this since 1998. So that's 22 years. Unbelievable.
That's awesome. And a heart for education. And I think, school PR and storytellers, communicators, they have such a vast background. Last week, I interviewed Peg Mannion, who used to be a journalist and then got into education journalism and then fell in love with that. So that's really unique. Now, you kind of talked about like some of your strategies right now and some things being put on hold. I was listening to a business podcast the other day, and they gave this analogy, and I'd like to run it by you. They said really, a lot of times school communications or any businesses, you're playing chess. And now COVID-19 hit, and now we're playing tennis. Because it's just back and forth and you can't take those big strategic moves. We've got to act so fast. But I think in schools, we're playing like table tennis or ping pong. We call it ping pong here in Wisconsin because it's even faster than tennis. Like you just said, Ohio just shut down schools, and we maybe were anticipating that. But things have happened so fast. For people who are used to kind of strategizing things out, how have you seen that play out, with school communicators and schools in general?
Yeah, I think probably more than any time else in my career, I have seen people being thankful that they have a school communicator, that they have a professional who is there to help them and guide them through this. I was working with a client more than a month ago when the governor decided to shut down schools for like a 2-week period or whatever it was, whatever the first iteration was. It seems like years ago. But they also had this unique situation that they were also going to deal with where the governor announced that schools were going to be closed, but they had also found out that they had 23 students who were pre-nursing students, because this was a career tech school, who had been potentially exposed to a nursing home patient because they were out doing their clinicals. So, they don't have a full-time person. I'm their person. I am their consultant. So I get called in and have to rush to there. But, as we're sitting there, going through all the things you have to go through and preparing for those situations is, there in this circumstance, there have been so many, I don't think people realize how much a school does and how many aspects of life it touches and how many different people it touches. And all the things you've had to think through to be able to not only communicate that, but just to come up with new systems and processes to be able to carry out some of the stuff that these schools are carrying out. And whether it's a large district or a small district, it's been astounding. So I think what I've noticed is that school PR people, this is school PR people's moments to shine. Obviously we wish it wouldn't have happened, but this is why you have a school PR person. And so hopefully they'll be, I guess more appreciated moving forward in the future. But yeah, I think that the superintendents especially are thankful because there's so much stuff to think about that, I'm sure a lot of people have missed and have had to go back and correct and do all types of stuff. So having somebody who can think through that for them, I think
very much so. And in most cases, we work with a lot of schools that don't have a full-time person. Again, we do social media, but we don't do everything else. There's the part of figuring out what you have to do, and then you got to communicate it. And then in this case, as soon as you started communicating it, sometimes it was changing. So it was just that back and forth. It was very, very stressful. I feel like we're getting on the other end of it a little bit in regards to just being able to provide some consistency. And now we've got some of the schools that have closed down for the remainder of the year. Not meaning that the communication is necessarily easier, but the rapid fire has slowed down a little bit. In regards to some of the things that you've had to tackle with communication, especially at a career tech center, we have a lot of followers out there of Social School for EDU that are in career tech. What are some of the unique things they've had to deal with? And then how has maybe social media played a role?
Yeah, I would say, one of the biggest things that I think we've seen is just the human toll that it's taking on, especially seniors. Think about, I can remember the end of my senior year of high school in 1994, and I just remember how fun it was. And all the different stuff you got to do, proms and, just being with your friends for that final few weeks. So I think that has been something, especially in career tech, because they're junior and seniors that, they specialize for 2 years in those programs. And you have to imagine these kids make a decision to leave, their physical K-12 school and come over to the career center. And they're coming, like the client I'm working with right now, they have 16 districts that feed into them. So, these kids come in and they don't necessarily know. It's basically like starting over. And then they spend 2 years there. And then a couple months before they're supposed to complete their program, that's kind of ripped away. So one, they don't get to be there physically to do what they do, right? This is hands-on skills. So that's been one of the challenges, especially because it's not, you can't do career tech online very well. It's just not, career tech is hands-on learning. But what's been unique, especially on social media that I've seen, are the career centers in Ohio, at least, that I paid attention to. Obviously everybody's doing these spirit weeks, but some of them have been letting the kids show off their skills while they're at home. We have there's a mom that follows the Instagram account that I manage, and she's been sharing pictures of her son doing DIY projects on one of their rentals. He's been building those sliding barn doors, and so she's been sharing he's a construction student, so she's been sharing his progress on that. We had a high school girl who participated in the online Spirit Week, showing her skills. She's a dental assisting student, and she was like giving a demonstration of how you create moldings and how you can create using mustard and mayonnaise and all this type of stuff. And these obviously these teenagers are very savvy on making these videos and sharing this content. So that's been a way for, at least in the career tech community, to showcase what students are doing at home, and that learning continues. And that's one of the ways to do it. I saw one career center they were using TikTok. They wanted the students to share, like they were having a dance off, and so they were, all these dances that are popular on TikTok. They were letting students submit their videos so they could share that content. So people have been really creative with how they've kept students engaged. And I think that that's important. I think that especially for the seniors, that's what they want to see.
Can you explain, you shared a few of them, like construction and a dental. I know that there's some food like areas, and then maybe like mechanics. Like what are some of the different tracks that they can go into?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So there's always these, a lot of states have different, they're organized differently. I think in Ohio we have 12 career clusters. So, you're talking like business programs that, and information technology would kind of fall under that. You have culinary arts, cosmetology, all the medical programs, pre-nursing, pharmacy, bioscience. A lot of people don't realize that career tech also can encompass performing arts. The district that I work with, they have a performing arts program, environmental science, architecture. I mean, welding. It goes across the gamut from, kind of these pre-college programs to programs that are preparing students straight to the workforce. You mentioned culinary, for instance. I noticed a couple of career centers having their culinary instructors, the chefs, actually do cooking demonstrations. They've created like these shows that they've been posting on their social media accounts, where the chefs show them how they can cook meals with whatever they've got at home. So that's another creative way that they've been doing it. Yeah. So the school I work with right now, they have almost 40 different
Yeah, that's
programs.
a lot. Now, just out of curiosity, are most of those going to have to finish up like when they are able to go back in person, because it is so hands-on, or how are they handling it?
Yeah. So in Ohio, they're just a lot of the testing has been canceled, and then a lot of the state, like cosmetology, for instance, like the state, those students can actually earn their license while they're in high school, but they have to sit for the state board, and they usually do that about this time of year. So when those kids walk out, they have their license. Well, they haven't obviously been able to do that. So now the state board, I heard, is going to kind of relax the number of contact hours that they have to have, and probably will, come up with something. I know that there's some talk about when it's safe in the summer for different programs that require some contact hours for them to come in. But it's going to be, I mean, nobody knows how it's going to go. But yeah, I mean, but one of the things the governor has guaranteed that all of those students will graduate and will receive the credentials that they have been working towards. It's just a matter of how we all kind of have
to be patient. It's such a cool program. As a mom of 6 kids, I love the career tech options for them. Now I'm imagining that recruitment is pretty important for your career tech centers. Have you guys moved any of that recruitment more online with social media or other options that you could talk about?
Yeah, so that's a big thing for career centers, right? Because you actually work for years to recruit a class that comes in their junior year. So most career centers they're starting in elementary, doing camps and visits in the classroom, career fairs, and then they bring either 7th graders or 8th graders. They take them on the tour for the first time, and then it's usually the sophomore year where you're really engaging with them. So, and most career centers, like in February or March, will have accepted that new class. So you can imagine they've accepted this new class, and they have a process in place for kind of onboarding them.
Right.
And then COVID-19 comes along and, what do you do? So, yeah. So one of the things I know that I can speak for just with what we're doing is we're, planning some virtual. So they have like kind of a new student celebration each year.
Okay.
Where they bring everybody to the campuses and they meet with their instructors and they do their uniform fittings because in career tech they wear uniforms based on their profession. So all of these different things have to kind of be reconfigured. So like in terms of the virtual experience, we're using tools like Zoom and Google Hangouts. It's very important for the students to connect with the instructors. I've also given them ideas that, you need to keep in touch with them throughout the summer. So why not, if you're comfortable using Facebook, create a Facebook group. If you're comfortable, using Twitter, create a private, Twitter page where you just invite them in that way. Or I've even told them like consider using something like Slack,
Right.
Which is kind of that online chat feature. Use a Google Classroom to bring them in and be able to post announcements and just keep in touch with them. So the other thing, though, what we're getting ready to do is, and I've seen some other career centers do it too, is they're, actually posting graphics out on social media saying, John Smith accepted to culinary arts, and then posting their homeschool and just kind of reinforcing it that way. I think social media has become such a powerful platform in this time to be able to, quickly put something out there that certainly takes time to put together, but doesn't obviously cost a lot of money to do. And thank God that hopefully your school has those established channels so that you can, push these things out there. So that's one of those are just some of the things we're doing. And it'll be interesting because, you already lose about 25% of your incoming class from the time they're accepted to the time they start in the fall. Yeah, it's kind of like college retention. It's called, a lot of people call it summer drain, right? Where they just change their mind and they don't want to come. So it's going to be interesting because we don't know what's going to happen in the fall. So it's going to be more important than ever that we use tools like social media and all of these online resources that we have, like Zoom and Google Hangouts and just everything that we can think of to just stay engaged with them. I was just talking to that client on Friday, and I just said, for the most part, the most important thing we're going to have to do is just reassure them, the students, but also their moms, that it's going to be okay. And we're going to have a plan for how this is going to work. Because I think for a lot of moms, they're going to be like, well, if my kid can't actually go and get in that welding lab, then they'll just stay at their homeschool and do what they're already doing. So it's just an unprecedented time. That's the most overused word right now, unprecedented, but it really is.
We're all dealing with it day by day, and it'll be changing. So great things to think about. I didn't know that big a fall off, and that constant communication, like you said, having social media channels in place ahead of time obviously really helps. Like I said in the intro, Shane, you've really been a pioneer. You started using, I think, social media back basically in 2009 when Facebook was just coming out. And I have to warn the people who are watching our video interview, like it's a little bit distorted. I can hear you great, but your picture is a little bit pixelated. So it's making Shane look even more futuristic. Maybe that's what I'll say. But but can you talk about your high point, your use of it back then, and just kind of share with our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So I started working at Ohio High Point Career Center in 2007, and instantly I was kind of social media was brand new then, right? It was really like wild west, and there were so many tools. I don't think people realize that there was Twitter, but there was also an alternative called Plurk that was exactly like Twitter. So a lot of these social media channels had competitors that have faded away. It was kind of like survival of the fittest. But I just remember thinking, we had to recruit our students, and I just thought like, well, I think social media sounds great, right? Like that was when I think Facebook finally opened up to everybody, maybe like in 2008, I want to say. And so just the idea of being able to kind of build your own media network really kind of instantly came to my mind. And so we just started using, everything. We used Flickr, we used YouTube, we used blogging was a big thing back then. We just, really threw our hats into the social media arena. And luckily I had a superintendent who was like, the lawyers say they don't want you to do this, but I'm going to let you do it. She said, just don't get me in trouble. And I still remember that. And we, we just went forward with it. And some of it was meaningful and some of it wasn't. But at the same time, it was kind of like, what did you have to lose? And there weren't a lot of schools doing it. At that time, honestly, at that time, I think I was probably the only one in Ohio doing it right away. And then, more and more started coming on. But we actually then, so in 2007, we started using it. And then by 2009, I was just kind of like, while everybody was still kind of catching up to just using it, I was like, oh, I want to kind of take it to the next level. And so that's when we came up with the High Point Journeys campaign, where we actually chose 10 of our students and we, took them through an interview process, made them sign a contract, trained them. And we actually gave them those flip cameras.
Yes,
do you remember those? Because that was before your phones did everything, right? But we gave them a flip cam and we gave them a digital camera. And we basically said, you guys are going to document your student experience for the whole school year. And I would have to give them each week I'd have to give them kind of a checklist of things that they did, but they signed a contract. And if they made it through the whole year, we let them keep the flip cam and the digital camera. But so we launched this kind of hub, this website called High Point Journeys. But yeah, we shared their stories. We used their videos. We put them out on YouTube. We were posting things on Facebook, Twitter. We really, we used it as our main marketing tool. And we actually took those students and we would take them out on the road and they became the face of our district. We put them in media interviews. We created those trade show kind of banners that you get. They had their own branded trade show set up. So when they were at career fairs, we let them do all the talking, let them do all the storytelling. And it was a big hit. And it was something that, colleges were kind of doing that at that time, but no K-12 school had done that, at least that we were aware of. And we got a lot of attention for it in the media. We won a lot of awards with it. But what was the best about it was we actually were able to see, applications and enrollment increase. And one of the funniest things is I remember when we would bring sophomores on our campus to tour, we would have you'd see it's some of the girls being like, oh, where's Micah at, or where's Tony, because they were familiar with these students because of the content that they were posting on High Point Journeys. And back then, we didn't let them just take over. Right now you do student takeovers. But back then, they actually had to submit all their content to me first before we would post it out there. Because we had to have these safeguards in place, because nobody back then, it was a lot of schools weren't allowed to do social media. So that was an exciting campaign. That was one of my kind of one of the original campaigns that I did, and it was a lot of fun, a lot of success, and actually a lot of career centers and even K-12 schools in Ohio replicated it. They used it as a template to start their own
Yeah, and we
version of
have a
High Point
blog featured
Journeys.
on Social School for EDU on this, and we actually you did a presentation that lives inside a membership group because you've done a lot of presentations for our followers. So what's so cool about that is that was like you created influencers before influencers was even a term, right?
Probably, yeah.
And
Probably.
you use the student's voice.
Right.
That is so critical. And that was 11 years ago. You guys, if in your schools, if you're not thinking about how we leverage the student experience and the student voice, then we're really missing the boat. They're such powerful storytellers. They can do better recruitment than you or I ever could, right?
Yeah.
And now technology isn't in the way because you don't have to hand out flip phones and just a digital camera.
Exactly.
They have this all the time, every day. They're used to it. They're so creative. It's going to resonate well with other kids. It's amazing that you did that back then. And even with the technology differences, I think I'll link to it in the show notes. You guys will definitely be able to check out that full. Oh boy, I was gone for a minute. Hang on. I'll hit record again here. So you guys can check out the full recording or the full review of that overview. My recording thing just went back to 0, so I'm praying that first part actually got recorded, because if it wouldn't, I'll be sad. But we have our Zoom connection, Shane. We got our Zoom connection, so we're good to go. If it was perfect, it just wouldn't be right. So I think that's so cool. It's really, any other last parting words just in regards to, that whole campaign that you were able to do, and obviously others then duplicated?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think in terms of social media specifically, it presents you with the opportunity to kind of create a space for storytelling. Right? I don't think that that's a big secret in this day and age in 2020. But still, I see a lot of schools using social media as just information channels. So my parting words would be like, think about the content that you can create, and especially in this moment, there is a lot of information that needs to be put out there in terms of, graduation requirements and where to pick up meals and all of that type of stuff. But at this time, it's really this human experience that everybody's going through. And I've seen such great content being created from a lot of schools that is generated from the students and the teachers. So keep doing that. But as we move beyond this, definitely think about your social media, like I did back, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, really, when I was planning that High Point Journeys. I was just thinking, like, I just want to do something that's not been done before. And so I think hopefully people will, in this profession, will take up that charge and think about ways that they can use technology and social media in ways that haven't been used before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you talk about information. Of course, we got to get information out, but you've got direct communication modes of that as well. Social media is really about engagement. And what causes engagement? Stories that people are going to like or love or comment on. They're not necessarily going to comment on just a piece of, hey, don't forget this, or, check this out there. We still see a lot of schools doing that. And you're not going to drive engagement, which means not a lot of people are going to see it because of those algorithms, right? So you've got to put things out that people resonate with. So as we kind of wrap up, and we talked about at the beginning a little bit, but Shane, what have you been most impressed with over this last month, 6 weeks, when it comes to schools or students or staff? And I'm specifically talking about this rapid change that happened with our temporary school closures and now, rest of the school year closures. What's been most impressive to you who have experience since 1998, you said? Yeah. So what's stuck out to you?
Yeah. I think what stuck out is how quickly schools have responded to the whole situation. and have focused on meeting the basic human needs of their students in this time, as opposed to worrying about test scores and all the requirements that come along with being in a learning institution. And I think one of the things in terms of the storytelling aspect is that we've seen a lot of great examples from, these choir teachers coming together and singing on Zoom, orchestras doing that, to seeing these the teachers putting together the messages and writing them down and taking a photo collage and creating that. All of these different ways that teachers and administrators and all these schools across the nation have really rallied behind a cohesive message that we're literally all in this together and it's going to be okay. And I saw one teacher, and I think if I had to nail down one thing, I think it's just like the individual teacher who has just taken the time to use social media, maybe for even the first time, just to communicate and stay in touch with their students. But I saw one teacher post a letter to parents saying, like, don't stress out if your kid's fallen behind or they're not doing well with this online learning situation. I will get them back to where they need to be when we're able to come back. But right now, I need you to focus on their emotional wellness, right? Their mental health, because sometimes they can't come back from that. And so I think that has impressed me the most, is people worrying about these students as human beings as opposed to, commodities and, just a number. So, and I think that has always been the case with teachers, but they're really going above and beyond to help tell that story. Yeah, I love it.
I just have to share quick with one of our schools that we serve. We get stories in from all of their staff, and we always encourage all the staff members, like the bus drivers and, the school lunch people and our paraprofessionals. But once this hit, we started getting submissions from one of our custodians at the elementary school. And he's kind of become, we've helped kind of craft his messages. But one of them was just, hey, kids, don't forget to say the Pledge of Allegiance every day. And he really wanted that message to come out. And so those are powerful connections. And then just, kind of a final thought too, what message do you want to share with other school PR pros out there? Now, we've got listeners that are an official, like school communication specialist, but we've also got those people that are a principal, that are secretary, they're a library media specialist. And, with the school communication, what would you like to share with them as far as any advice or, anything?
Well, I think, one, thank you for the work you do. I've worked in schools full time, so I know what it's like to be on that end of it. And I just know that the amount of workload and just stress that they have to be carrying around during this time, because everything's so uncertain. So one, thank you to them. But the other thing is, don't underestimate the value of communication. It sounds like a cliche, but if you're not a full-time school PR person, all the full-time school PR people are like, well, duh, yeah, communication's where it's at. But for principals, superintendents, secretaries who sometimes bear the brunt of sharing on social media, don't underestimate the value of what you're doing there and making it consistent. And I would also say that, sometimes the messages don't have to be anything else other than just some sort of, take care of yourself.
Right.
Right. I think about a lot of, if you go dark on your social media channels right now, that's not a good thing. You want to stay in touch and stay engaged. And I think that it matters to these kids. I really do. I think that they're watching it and paying attention to it more now than they ever have, because it's a way to feel connected.
Definitely. And all of you who are school communicators, it hasn't been easy, but you're making a difference. And that's the reason why we do this show. We really want to highlight that. So Shane, you can find out more about him at purposeland.us, right? And and find you.
And on Twitter and all of the good stuff. Yeah. Twitter and That's probably the best
Okay,
one.
awesome. Because that is a great place to connect with school PR,
Yeah.
and we've shared it before. School PR people are so giving. So if you're wondering about some strategies or questions or tools and templates, we'll definitely get that article linked. And I know you've got other great things in regards to specifically career tech, but it really crosses the board. So thank you so much, Shane, for spending time with us.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank you.
everybody for tuning in. We will see you next time. We will have a interview coming at you very soon, featuring another amazing school PR professional. So until next time, we'll see you later. Keep telling those stories.